Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan and I have very much been looking forward to making this video. I'm very excited because I get to treat myself today to a couple of delicious pours, and we are going to be hitting the Jack Daniel's 12-year Batch 2 alongside the JD10 Batch 3. So I landed a bottle of the JD12 Batch 2 for myself, and then a Patreon member was kind enough to send in a sample of the 10 years so we could compare the two side by side. So I'm very excited about this because these are like, I mean, people go crazy about it. Like, okay, so look at this bottle, right? There's clearly a few ounces missing here, probably about 3 ounces. That's because the second I got this bottle in Michigan, my local Grand Rapids Bourbon Club on Facebook was like, oh, hey, can I get a sample of that? Hey, can I get some? I would really like an ounce of that. So I haven't even drank this yet, but I cracked the seal for some other guys in the club, and when I was out doing some shopping on Saturday, I made the rounds and dropped the samples off to some guys, and a couple of them got back to me and said they absolutely adored it. So I'm going to see if it's as good as they say, and everyone else on the internet says this bottle is. And then we'll also pour the 10, and after we cover the 12, we'll try the 10 and make some comparisons there. Sound good? I gotta say, the bottle is gorgeous. I mean, it's typical Jack Daniel's design, but the dimensions are a little bit different. It tapers up here and gets a little bit wider towards the top of the base. And the neck is not exactly the same dimensions as the standard bottle either. So it does kind of stand out as a JD product that's maybe special in some way. It's got a striking but familiar design, but also distinguishes itself as being something that's unique. I love the dark label with the gold embossing. Really pops off the label there. It just looks great. I know a lot of people tend to think of Jack Daniel's as like a poor man's whiskey, which is honestly too bad, because this is not what your grandpappy was drinking. I mean, Jack Daniel's has come a long way and really established themselves as an extremely reputable and respectable distillery, making top shelf whiskeys. Now, a couple things about these two bottles. So the JD 12 year, the MSRP for this is $95. Okay, which honestly, for a 12-year whiskey, that's really good. Good luck finding it for that, though. I got very lucky. I got this through a connection, through a back room of a liquor store. So it was like a direct sale thing. So I got it at minimum price. Most people are going to be paying, I mean, I've seen these on the secondary for, 180 bucks. It really is one of those things where you just have to be maybe in the right place at the right time, or leveraging connections. It depends on your state and how they handle sales. Michigan sucks for getting stuff like this. It really is. You either know somebody or you are in the right place at the right time, and you just get lucky. Now, the JD 10 year is actually the same juice. It's the same mash bill. It's 2 years younger, and it's 97 proof. And the 12 year is 107 proof. So the 10 year is 2 years younger, 10 proof points less. But other than that, same stuff. And the MSRP for that is $85. So for a $10 MSRP increase, you can get 2 extra years and 10 more proof points, which to me is kind of a no-brainer, right? It's like, well, of course I'm going to snag that up if I get the chance to. So we'll visit the 10 year after we do this one and see if it lives up. See if it can, have a spot next to the 12 year on your shelf. I gotta say, the nose of this is just friggin' gorgeous. The first thing that comes to mind is like pan-fried plantains and brown sugar. You ever had plantains? I think plantains make a great component in a sweet and savory dish. With some nice brown sugar crusted pan-fried plantains. There's even a little bit of like toasted coconut on this as well. A little bit of a toasted coconut note. But there is a ton of oak. Well-seasoned barrel funky oak. Like it sat in a nice damp warehouse for, well, because it did, for over a decade. And some wonderful dark notes in here too, like leather and tobacco. So you have the sweet, you got the heat, and you got the deep richness as well, those dark flavors too. Absolutely beautiful nose. So the mash bill on this is 80% corn, 12% malted barley, 8% rye. And let's get in on this. Cheers. Man, that is such an assertive sip. There's nothing bashful about it. In fact, I feel like it drinks above its proof point of 107. This drinks like a 117. Right up front of the palate is sweet and heat. The oak doesn't come in until a little bit later in the palate and then well on into the finish. But up front, I get those sweet notes we were getting, like the toasted coconut, the brown sugar, the fried plantains, and then in comes the base with those leather and tobacco notes. and then it kind of extends out into the finish, which is all just tons of great barrel funky oak and this like sweet maple syrup note as well. Man, is that good. That sip is delightful. I am thoroughly enjoying this. I just want to keep drinking it. I think my favorite thing about it is that wonderful, like the fried plantains and toasted coconut right up front. What a wonderful note to get. I grew up spending most of my summers, my family, my folks, they really like to take me and my brother down to Florida and on the Gulf Coast, Sarasota, Siesta Key. And so when I was real little, I got really into like coastal and Caribbean cuisine and all that stuff. I was having fried plantains and, coconut crusted, like battered, shrimp and fish. And then I ended up, for one summer, I went down to Montserrat, which is an island in the Caribbean, volcanic island. It's kind of like a modern-day Pompeii, actually, because I guess the volcano had erupted. The tourist city that was there in the shadow of the volcano ended up getting covered in ash and dust. And it's sort of like this derelict city that's still intact, but just cased in the debris that came down from the volcano. And then the other half of the mountain is all basically locals and like rich people who own villas. But I spent a summer there. We went there. It was like a friend of the family's who owned a villa there and let us stay there, which was super cool. But the Caribbean cuisine there was phenomenal. I loved it. Really cool experience. I even got to, that's where I took like all of my scuba diving classes and got my certification and was able to do some scuba diving in the shade of the volcano and see like the volcanic formations and the reefs that were created. Very, very cool experience. But this, I know this is like totally like an American, Jack Daniels. What's more American than Jack Daniels? But up front on the palate, I get these Caribbean vibes with the coconut and the plantain. It's making me revisit some of those memories, which I love. Beautiful sip. And you can totally tell. You got that Lincoln County process in there. The charcoal filtration leaves just such a distinct impression on the whiskey. It's pretty unmistakable. Love that. Love this sip. Now, batch 1 ended up getting a lot more fruity notes. I think people often attributed the Jack Daniel's 12-year batch 1 with a lot of those dark, deep, rich, fruity notes that I'm not getting a ton of those on this. The only sort of fruit note is that fried plantain, which is a sweet and savory kind of a fruit. But other than that, I mean, lots of those dark, rich leather notes as well. So I think it's a little different than batch 1 in that regard. I just want to keep drinking this. If I was to give this a score per my scale, I think I got to go with I'm going to go with an 8.8. It is exceptional. It's bordering into the phenomenal territory and innovative territory. 8.8 is very high praise for me. I think this is something that if you ever have the chance to grab, like you gotta do it. You just gotta do it. It's that simple. So good. The only way I would see this pushing up even higher is if I got maybe a little bit more of that barrel funk note that was super prevalent on the nose. If we got some of that funky warehouse action going on the palate. And if that toasted coconut note and plantain note lasted a little bit longer into the palate, man, I think that this would easily be a 9+. Otherwise, that's being super nitpicky because this is friggin' delicious. For comparison's sake, let's try the 10-year here. Very similar nose, a little less of that plantain and more of the mapliness. I think the maple is a little bit more prevalent on the nose of the 10-year. Less of that plantain and toasted coconut. Batch 3 on this, by the way. Yeah, lots of maple, tons of oak, brown sugar, more of a toasted marshmallow campfire note on this. Let's try it. Subtle sweetness, dry spice. This doesn't have nearly as much base. I'm not getting like any of those leather and tobacco and those rich, sweet, molassesy notes on this. It's more of just like a delicate sweetness, more confectionery sweetness alongside a lot of oak and some of that spicy oak nature that you get on a whiskey that's had a lot of contact with the barrel, and it imparts some of those tannic spicy notes from the oak. There's a lot of that on this, but the base end is a little bit lacking, but it's really palatable. So if this is something that you didn't want to like blow out your palate, you just wanted to have something that was like a nice refined Jack Daniels, this is pretty good. It might be a little unfair to have this after the 12 because the finish is similar, but the palate on this next to this feels weak. I feel like I need to have this again, like redecant this sample back into the bottle and revisit it at a later time when this is the only thing I've had. You know what I mean? It almost feels a little unfair next to the JD12. It seems really watered down. It is 10 proof points lower, which isn't a ton, but it's noticeable, and 2 years younger. So fewer trips into the red layer of that barrel and back out because of the 2-year difference. And because of that, I feel like I'm getting maybe just a little bit less of those vanillins that come from the oak and the lignans breaking down inside of it. Fewer of those vanillins getting extracted, so it's a little bit less sweet. More of the dry spice. But otherwise, it's still pretty good. $85. I mean, if you see it for that, obviously you got to pick the 10-year up too. But I'll revisit that again when it's a fair comparison instead of having it right after the 12-year. So there you go. That is the JD 12-year and a little snippet of the 10. Batch 2 on the 12, batch 3 of the 10. Hey, best of luck getting your hands on a JD 12 if you manage to get your hands on one. Let me know in the comments and let me know what you thought about it. I want to know what your opinions were of it. If you got some of the similar notes that I did, man, I just thought that was a phenomenal sip. It takes what we know and love about JD, expands on it, gives it some refinement, but also kind of mixes in some of these notes that I wasn't expecting with the plantain, toasted coconut, which really accentuates the standard JD profile and complements it very well. I'm so glad to have a bottle of this on my shelf. Hey, thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by leaving a like on it and a comment. Those are like the best free ways to support the content here on YouTube. Big shout out to my Patreon supporters. Really appreciate each and every one of you. I used the Patreon money to pay for this bottle. So that's what you guys are doing. You're keeping my channel alive. I appreciate that. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.